Anytime, Miss Daphne. 5432.
Welcome to the Asia Pacific Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction. I am Daphne Oseña-Paez, and this afternoon we'll be talking about leveraging artificial intelligence technology to enhance disaster risk reduction. And with me is Dr. Lindy Fursman, the Director of Climate and Energy Policy of the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. She is the expert in all aspects of climate change, including mitigation, the energy transition, and adaptation. Hello, Dr. Fursman. First of all, tell us about the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change and the work that you do with them.
Thank you, and great to be here this afternoon. So yes, I work for the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, where I am the Director of Climate and Energy Policy. The Institute advises political leaders and governments globally. We're a global NGO, and we work with more than 40 governments, assisting them sort of right across strategy, policy, and delivery of their priorities, with a theme around enabling technology that can help them deliver effective services. So I lead the Climate and Energy Policy team in London and work with our governments across the world.
Very interesting. And you've done work with artificial intelligence, and you gave a talk about it. Could you tell us more about how AI can help with disaster risk reduction?
Absolutely. Yes, I spoke on Monday about really the transformative power of artificial intelligence in disaster risk reduction. We all know that disaster risk reduction is critical. It saves lives, it helps protect our communities and our economies, and helps us to respond more quickly. But we also know that there are challenges in current ways of dealing with disaster risk reduction, including siloed efforts, stakeholder consultation being uncoordinated, the ability of communities to engage, and really some big data gaps. And AI really has a huge potential to overcome some of these barriers, as well as really transform the way we think about disaster risk reduction, right across the value chain, from predicting disasters, understanding their impact both before the event and during, being able to respond appropriately and quickly to post-event situations, being able to prevent disasters, and actually also to harness new forms of financing for disaster risk reduction. So one of the things I would say as well, just early in this conversation, is that AI really works together with other new technologies, such as granular satellite imagery, Internet of Things data, large data sets. And together with AI, these really give us what I would say is sort of foundational data and the computational infrastructure that we need to enable AI-informed disaster risk reduction.
How can government play a part in using AI for the disaster risk reduction?
Government policy settings are really critical, actually, in the use of AI in disaster risk reduction. So getting the policy framework right, including, for example, having a disaster risk reduction champion in government who understands the potential of AI and is committed to acting on AI-informed insights, for example, in early warning systems. It's also really critical to have the right data governance frameworks in place. AI is only as good as the data on which it draws. So there is a role for government there, not only in filling data gaps, and we can see, there are very complementary activities in terms of citizen participation in that data collection, but also foundations for the sharing of data and governing of it. And actually the Tony Blair Institute is working with governments across the world to put in place this foundational infrastructure to enable governments to maximise the potential of AI in terms of delivering government services differently, and that includes in disaster risk reduction.
Would you be able to give us some real-world examples, projects that you've worked on that's already using AI for DRR?
Yeah, absolutely. I won't talk about projects that we specifically have worked on, although what I would say is here in the Philippines, we are exploring with the government the potential to use multimodal data and AI together to better allow for pre-planning for both flooding and landslides. So being able to provide timely, evidence-based, action-oriented information for the government here to be able to enhance climate adaptation strategies. But perhaps I could give a couple of examples in terms of what we've seen around the world. For example, when we're thinking about predicting disasters, where one of the huge advantages of AI is the ability to really analyse and synthesise huge amounts of data in real time. And this enables us to not only see patterns and correlations in data that we might not have seen before, but also to be able to use neural networks to look at non-linear patterns. So for example, in seismic information, to be able to predict earthquakes and aftershocks. And we can also see, for example, machine learning algorithms that can use high-resolution satellite imagery together with machine learning to be able to identify incredibly early signs of wildfires before those signs become visible. So that's in the prediction space. I would also note that in impact and the impact of disasters, this is actually really complex in terms of looking at the interaction between environmental, social and economic information. AI can really help here as well, enabling, for example, decision makers to understand the impact of events through simulations, such as the building of digital twins, which can help actually unpack what some of those impacts might be. And we can see, for example, in Microsoft's AI for Earth partnership, where information from topographical, meteorological and oceanographic data has been used to forecast the impact of hurricanes and storm surges in coastal United States. So that's the sort of example we can see of immense value for decision makers in that space.
Okay.
I would also just point out there's one other really huge benefit actually of AI in this space, which goes beyond its technical contribution, and that is the fact that it can democratise disaster risk reduction. So right from being able to synthesise and simplify disaster risk reduction documentation, which is often very hefty, through to allowing citizens to provide information through, for example, AI mobile apps, to provide information about local hazards and risks that then can be aggregated for decision makers to use in sort of real time. So you get sort of a democratising impact in disaster risk reduction enabled by AI.
So it's interesting that the tool will not just be useful for policymakers, but also for the public.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And it's quite empowering.
I think that's right. I think there's also quite significant potential here in actually new forms of financial and investment arrangements. Governments around the world really struggle with fiscal space for spending on disaster risk reduction. And what we can see with AI-driven tools is potential for example, investment to be made more transparent through the use of digital ledger technology and AI. We can see new innovative insurance products, for example, parametric insurance coupled with new payments systems developments that enable governments to receive payments automatically once a particular threshold, rainfall, for example, has been reached. So really a real breadth of applications.
Okay, it's very interesting that you're also, there is a possibility of doing a project in the Philippines. How else could it be applicable? Here in the Philippines, a lot of talk on AI at the moment is maybe a little bit skewed on the negative, its impact on social and personal well-being. But in this case, AI is a tool to help communities and plan for resilience and disaster risk reduction. What specific things could we use this for in the Philippines?
I think there is significant opportunity actually in looking, if we think about the hazards and disasters that we're seeing globally at the moment, many are driven by rising temperatures and climate change more generally. So if we're thinking about the source that temperature rise and global efforts to act on climate and emissions, there is a significant potential for AI to assist in that area as well. So, for example, we see in efforts around afforestation, the use of AI together with some of the new sensing technologies that I've talked about, so high-resolution satellite data, Internet of Things sources, sensors providing information, significant potential to allow governments to establish baselines for forestry activity, very useful in terms of proving additionality in a carbon markets sense, and allowing governments to harness some of that significant revenue potential there, as well as providing sort of real-time monitoring, reporting, verification, which is really necessary to give that action integrity and transparency. And we also see, in sort of on my theme of investment, there is a critical need for investment in climate action in Southeast Asia and in a number of other regions. And we see quite a lot of potential for AI to assist in this area as well through the use of sort of payment systems technology and new distributed ledger options, for enhanced transparency to allow investors and donors to see where climate action is happening. So some quite significant potential in the climate space.
Okay, you mentioned investment. The theme, many themes here in the conference touched on the importance of investing in DRR.
Yes.
And not for it not to be seen as just an expense. It actually is an investment for the future.
That's right.
So you're saying also to invest through artificial intelligence, and this could help?
Absolutely. We know that for every dollar spent on DIR, there are multiples in terms of return on it. We also know that, for example, even as much as 24 hours notice for some events like heat waves can reduce the costs to the economy by up to 30%. So there are significant fiscal savings associated with these investments and a significant potential for AI coupled with other new technologies to actually open channels for investment to flow for both mitigation and adaptation.
Okay. It's been this is the third day of the conference. Any other learnings that you've come across in dealing with other delegates in other countries here?
I think one of the things that's really struck me is actually just the commonality of the challenge that we're facing, and actually the commonality of the solutions, investment, we've talked about technology, solutions, and then the right policy framework that enables those to deliver.
So going back to policy, what should countries be doing now to prepare for the possibility of investing in AI now or in the future?
I think making sure that they understand the potential of AI and that they have the right foundational frameworks in place to allow them to capitalise on, we talk about governing in the age of AI, and the AI has the potential to really transform the way governments deliver effective services. So getting those foundational pieces in place is critical.
Okay. So in your work, what are you looking forward to in terms of, you're in the cusp of change and transformation. What would you like to see happen, through AI or disaster risk reduction?
I think for me, I really hope that governments and investors in the capital markets, policymakers and private companies understand the potential of these tools to overcome many of the barriers that we've seen to investment flowing where it's most needed, and for that to be leveraged really to both reduce global emissions and make countries that are most vulnerable more resilient.
Thank you. We learned a lot today about leveraging artificial intelligence technology to enhance disaster risk reduction. Thank you so much, Dr. Lindy Fursman.
Thank you.
Of the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. This concludes this interview. Thank you very much. Okay. Wow.